Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us for our second Resideo webinar session on UV air purifiers. My name is Jamie Quanrud, and I'm part of the Resideo sales training team. And on behalf of our team, I'd like to welcome you to our training session today. And before we get started with our technical presentation, I'm going to cover just a few administrative items. And first, a quick note to all of you attendees on the call with us today. You are muted. However, if at any point during our technical presentation you'd like to ask a question, please go ahead and type that question into the chat or the Q&A feature on Zoom. We have reserved about 15 minutes at the end of our presentation today for questions. So if you do have a question that comes up during the presentation, please use that Q&A function found in your Zoom webinar controls and ask your question. We will cover those questions at the end of our session today. If you want to hit the next slide, on your screen, you're going to see our new website that will feature our upcoming webinar schedule, where every week we are giving you 2 opportunities to join us and learn about our products. So please join us every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And when you view this website, you will see that we have webinars scheduled out for the next 6 weeks on a variety of topics. And we really do hope that you join us for these future sessions, as we have lots of technical information to share with all of you. And on the next slide, for those contractors who are joining us for the live session today, and you are interested in earning 1 hour of NATE continuing education, there are a few things to note. In the registration process for some of our contractor attendees, you provided us with your NATE identification number, and we will be submitting those details to NATE for crediting for today's live session. If you did not provide us with your NATE ID when you registered and you'd like to receive credit for attending our live session, we do ask that you email your first and last name and your NATE ID to homes.university@resideo.com before the middle of next week, so by Wednesday of next week. This information will be submitted to NATE for crediting. Any requests sent after Wednesday of next week from this training cannot be processed. And as a reminder, we can only process requests for NATE credits when you attend the live webinar sessions. We are unable to send to NATE and process requests for watching a recorded version of this session. For more information about the NATE program, please visit their website at www.natex.org. And today we are joined by several key individuals. We have on the phone with us Ryan McCardle, who is our IAQ product manager. He will be available during our Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. From our channel marketing team, we have Holly Werning and Rebecca Talbot, who will be in the chat helping to answer some questions that come up. And again, we have reserved about 15 minutes at the end of our presentation today for questions. So please go ahead and use that Q&A function in your Zoom controls to ask any questions that may come up. And we'll cover those at the end of our session today. And now we're going to turn over the presentation to Vinny Ventura as our UV air purifier expert. He is going to share with us the details of the Honeywell Home branded UV air purifier line of products. Thanks so much for being with us today, Vinny. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody today. It's kind of an interesting environment that we are doing business in, as the majority of us might be working from home. So we have to not only deal with our everyday business issues and things that we have to do, but we also have to deal with our family that might be in the background and a barking dog from here and there. But this is an interesting situation we're in. We're facing an emergency like no other in modern times, at least as to my recollection. With this COVID-19 health emergency, we're changing how we go about business. This is an unprecedented time, and we have to be able to adapt and change and face whatever comes our way so that our businesses can stay solid and grow. And I know that we're going to be getting a lot of you as contractors and also as the wholesalers are on the line, we'll be getting a lot of calls regarding indoor air quality and UV lights and what do they do and how do we handle this and what can we say and what should we not say. So the goal here is to give you as much information as we can regarding our product lineup and how we are addressing this coronavirus health emergency that's occurring. So how do we navigate the conversation with our customers regarding this ongoing respiratory virus condition? Well, here's the bottom line. There isn't anybody out there that can claim that their indoor air quality products are 100% effective in keeping customers from getting this virus. No one can say that. Anyone who's saying that is unfortunately not telling you the entire truth. There are some recommendations from ASHRAE that say that there are ways to reduce the amount of airborne microorganisms, pathogens, and the like that are in your house and in your ducted system by the proper use of a ventilation system, proper filtration with a good filtration system, not the 1-inch filters, but something at least 4-inch media, something like that or better, and having source control using UV lights. And this is all documented through ASHRAE and how these things work together. So we're going to give you information today on how to have the conversation with your customers and how to understand what's going on, what to say, what to promise, what not to promise, using our Honeywell Home branded products from the Resideo portfolio. So some recommendations. According to the World Health Organization, this virus is mainly transmitted through droplets, which are spread around mostly through individuals that are infected and are coughing or sneezing, and then you are within that what they say the 6-foot radius is, and unfortunately you may these droplets may go into your respiratory system, and then you would get infected. There is a doctor, Dr. Maria van Kerkhove, who happens to reside in Switzerland, and she is the World Health Organization expert on diseases and zoonoses and emerging diseases and zoonoses. And she also states that this virus not only can be transmitted through droplets, but depending on your air quality or air factors, by factors I mean heat and humidity, it may be suspended in the air for several hours. Depending on how humid and warm the air is how long the virus will stay suspended. Well, keeping that in mind, our solutions that we're presenting today using UV lights is designed to treat the air that's inside of your ducted system. It will not do anything for the air that's outside the ducted system unless we do some type of circulation, which I'll get to in a second. But keeping that in mind, please be attentive and keep your surfaces clean. Wash your hands daily. If you sneeze into your elbow, the same things that we're hearing over and over on the news. It's good to reinforce these habits that we have to get into on a daily basis now. And you know, they're not bad habits to keep going even after this emergency goes away. So I said that these products, these solutions, help in reducing the contaminants inside of our ducted system. Well, by having a fan that's put on continuous, if possible, or having a circulating property of the fan turned on, you can effectively clean the air inside the home by running it through the ducted system and through the fan and through the UV and other IAQ solutions that you may implement in the home. Okay, and again, I'm just going to stress one more time: constant cleaning of surfaces is very important because these items only disinfect what goes through the ducted system. So Resideo has an answer for all the what we call 4 pillars of IAQ. And by 4 pillars, a good structure is maintained by having strong pillars. And we have what we call our 4 pillars of IAQ, which when you use all 4, you design a optimum IAQ solution. Those 4 pillars being humidification control, which takes into account humidification in the winter months, dehumidification in the summer months, proper air filtration, either with a media or an electronic air filter solution, ventilation using an ERV or an HRV or something like that, and then, of course, air purification and source control using UV lights. And then you take all these IAQ items, and we have strong control options that can monitor, maintain, and work all of these things together to have one IAQ solution. So today we're going to be concentrating on air purifiers and UV lights using air purifiers. So let's talk about how UV light works in a ducted system. Well, how UV light affects microorganisms is that it will infiltrate the cell walls of these microorganisms, reducing their ability to reproduce. These microorganisms, they live to reproduce. That's their whole function, is just to keep multiplying and multiplying until they get to a point where they don't no longer, they can take over a situation. So we do this 2 ways. We reduce the reproduction 2 ways. One, we want to neutralize airborne pathogens that are in our air system. We do that by putting the UV lights in the airstream, usually in the return is a great place to put it. And then when the microorganisms get in contact with the UV light, they are rendered harmless by breaking or scrambling their DNA. And then eventually since they can't reproduce, they're rendered harmless, okay? The higher the concentration of UVC that you use, UVC being the light source that we're using in our UV lights, okay? The higher the concentration, the better it is. And we're going to go over in a little while how UV in different in different CFM situations and different types of microorganisms require different concentrations of UVC. But with UV, there's no such thing as too much. It's all about power and placement. If you have the correctly placed UV or UV lights, because if you look at the next bullet, we want to neutralize coil surfaces as well. So we install a UV light over the coil, plus another one in the return, and then we're effectively neutralizing anything that is created by the system in the coil, in the humid atmosphere of the coil, okay, preventing growth of anything on that coil. And we're also neutralizing the airborne pathogens of all the materials that are introduced into the system from the outside. So why do we use UV light? It's because it's very effective. And there's always bacteria, there's always mold, there could be viruses always present in the home. Some of them are harmful, some of them not so much, but they're always present. And we also have the mold that grows on AC coils because of the humid environment that coils are always in. So by using the UV light and by scrambling the DNA of these of the cells of these microorganisms, we effectively control their growth. So we do this by concentrating the UV light specifically in certain areas, like I said, over the coil and in the return. Who needs this UV light? Essentially everybody does. Whether you have children who have immune systems that aren't fully developed yet, elderly people that may be compromised, whether you live in humid climates, whether you have, there's a little bit of an echo. If everyone can mute the call, it'd be great. Humid climates. If you live in a humid climate, you have the ability to grow mold, and also certain bacteria grow in humid climates. If you also live in a dry climate in the wintertime with closed windows, those are breeding grounds for bacteria and viruses. Essentially, anybody who wants clean air should have a UV light. And I think that's the conversation that a lot of your customers are going to want to hear from you and may even be starting the conversations themselves. So there are different types of UV light wavelengths. UV light is ultraviolet light, and it's just outside of our visible light spectrum. So UVA essentially is blue light, is a long wave UV, which doesn't really affect the microorganisms at all. UVB is the type of rays that you may see in a tanning salon, or the type of rays that are the sun rays that are coming through, filtered through the atmosphere. And then UVC is what we have in our UV lights, is what effectively renders these organisms, these microorganisms, harmless. So we use UVC in our lights. So this technology is not new. It's been around for quite a while. It's been around for, I'm going to say, decades upon decades. It's being used commercially to keep the air clean in situations where you might need as sterile as possible a situation. For example, hospitals, surgery, operating rooms, that kind of thing. Restaurants, to keep any type of foods or prep areas free of contaminants. Nursing homes, for the obvious reasons, as elderly people with compromised immune systems, and also to treat water treatment facilities and things like that. So UV is used in a lot of situations, and now it's becoming it's a situation where we're using it in residential applications also. The issue that I see, which is a trend that is a little disturbing but understandable, is that if you look at this chart, from 2013 to 2019, fewer people have purchased UV treatment products from a commercial or from a contractor, from a professional installer. This could be for a couple of reasons. One may be the fact that contractors may not be offering because they don't understand it. Another may be that contractors may be afraid to offer it because they're afraid that someone else is going to come in and undercut them that's not offering the solution. If a UV solution, or an IAQ solution, I should say, is offered to a customer, and it's explained to them why it's beneficial to their health, to their well-being, and to their comfort. Because when you have a good IAQ solution implemented, your house is more comfortable than if you don't. It's a value-added proposition, and you could always do it as a good, better, best solution. But I always say you should always offer a minimum of products. UV light being a very simple one to install. Okay, very easy, not terribly expensive to add to a quote, and it does do a lot of benefits. So this is an opportunity for well-informed contractors to make a difference, because the consumer is looking for an answer, especially now in the world that we are currently in. If they don't find the answer from their trusted contractor, they're going to find the answer online, and they may not get a truthful answer, or they might just be getting something from retail that may not work as effective as the solution that you can provide as a contractor. We have a big portfolio of products for different applications or different requirements. We have line voltage UV lights, our UV 100A and E's, in voltages of 110 volt and 120 volt. We have dual lamp UV lights as well, because one of the things I said earlier, that how this system works is it's all about power and placement. That's something that I always try to have anyone that I'm talking to understand. You can't over install UV lights as long as they're installed correctly. The more you have, the more that you can affect in a good way. And then we also have our UV 2400 family of products, which are our low voltage installations, which makes it easier for a contractor to install without requiring an electrician do any type of work, because maybe their municipalities require that anytime you're working with 110 volts, you need a licensed electrician. So it is a simple installation. So our 24-volt UV air purifiers with the Air Bright odor absorption option are a phenomenal answer. Easy to install, very adaptive, very flexible as to how you would install them. So Air Bright itself is a way to improve air quality by reducing VOCs. Okay, what are VOCs? VOCs are volatile organic compounds. Essentially, they're particles in, or they're compounds in the air that create odors in the home. So what are some examples of these volatile organic compounds or VOCs? Well, chemicals that you use for cleaning on an everyday basis, your bleach, your cleaning materials, your Windexes, any kind of materials that you may be storing in your basement for the purpose of cleaning, or even things like furniture and carpets and cooking. All these things that are present in your home or tasks that you perform on a daily basis may produce VOCs. Well, the idea of the air bright is to remove these odors that would be coming through the system, through the return, pass through the air bright system, and be rendered and will be converted into other substances. And these substances would be water vapor or carbon dioxide, which is what we exhale, and they would pass through the air harmlessly. So how do we do that? We use a process called photocatalytic oxidation reaction. It breaks down all the VOCs into simpler components, which are these water vapor and carbon dioxide components that would be harmless then in the air. It works very similar to how a catalytic converter works in a car, by reducing the pollution that is produced by the engine as much as possible to adhere to emissions laws that we have. So it's essentially, that's a good way to describe it to a consumer, that the way this breaks down the VOCs is the same way that your car uses the catalytic converter to break down some of the pollution that is created by the engine. So by installing one of these, and if you can see in this picture, there's several ways to install them, which I'll go into in a little bit, but you can actually install it inside by using the magnets that are attached to it right over the coil. Not only are you reducing anything that's produced by the coil, but also what's running through the system. If there's any VOCs that are present in the system, they would run through the air bright and be turned into water vapor or CO2. So we have two options in our lineup of the UV 2400. The first one is the UV only. It's designed to either keep the coil clean, or you can use it as well in the return. And it reduces viruses and bacteria by having them pass by the light and then rendered harmless. And if you add the UV plus air bright option, not only are we keeping that coil clean, reducing viruses and bacteria and mold, but we're also reducing odors and the VOCs that are in the air. Let's talk about a few installation options. So, well, first and foremost, it's very important to understand that it is a low voltage product, which means that, like I said earlier, you may not require an electrician to do the work. It's a 24-volt product. Everything comes in the box that you need except for the transformer. Depending on how many lights you're going to be installing in the system is whether you're going to use it. You can see our part numbers that we put, the AT120A or the AT140A. Essentially, the difference between these step-down transformers is the AT120A is a 20 VA transformer. Each one of our lights puts out 17 VA. So if you're using one light, you can do an AT120A. And if you're doing more than one light, if you're doing two lights, you go with the AT140A. The lamp will always be on these systems. There's no downside to leaving the lamp on. Okay. Two ways to mount it. You saw in the earlier picture where it was mounted inside using the magnets that we have on the outside of the housing of the UV light. Or we could just cut the appropriate holes. Depending on whether you have an air bright or not, you'd cut one or two holes. We give you a template. You just put the template on the duct and you just cut out the holes. And then you would just mount the unit with the supplied hardware, and then we'd wire it up. So you have choices of mounting. It's great if you do have an access hatch. Mounting on the inside just makes the installation much quicker and also cleaner. The one downside I would say about mounting on the inside is that through the lamp window you can see the blue light. When it's mounted on the inside, you would just have to we'd have to do an inspection to see if it was working or not. Lamps are designed to be replaced yearly. UV over time does wear down. The light will always be on. The blue light will always be visible, but over time the UVC does start to wear down. So we recommend that you replace the lamp yearly. The air bright itself, the VOC or odor removal portion of the device does not need to be replaced. It just needs to be cleaned from time to time, and the way we clean it is with a little compressed air. Is a very effective way of cleaning it. As far as lamp replacement, when it's time to replace the lamp, if the lamp is through the duct, not inside, all you would have to do is, without even disconnecting it from power, is you just turn the socket. And when you turn the socket, it activates a switch that turns the lamp off so that you're not exposing yourself to UVC rays. You should never expose yourself to UVC rays. That's why when you're installing in the return, it's important that you make sure you cannot see the UV rays directly through the return. So you just turn the socket, pull out the lamp. The lamp, it just plugs in its two prongs. Pull out the old lamp, put in the new one, slide the whole thing back in, and turn it again quarter turn. It's about a quarter turn. It turns right back on because the micro switch will then engage again, and you've just replaced the light. If you are going to be checking the air bright for cleaning it out, you would have to pull out the whole housing by pulling out the screws. Before you do that, I recommend you pull the lamp out so that when you are pulling it out, you don't accidentally damage the bulb. So how effective are your UV lights in reducing the viruses? Well, this is important to note that UV air purifiers with the air bright odor absorption system, they're designed to deactivate and neutralize most airborne contaminants, including a lot of mold, a lot of different bacteria, a lot of viruses that are in home ducted systems. But it hasn't been tested with the recent coronavirus. What does that mean? Does it mean, it means that we don't have the data yet to say how effective it is with COVID-19, but be wary of any company that claims that their solution kills the virus. There have not been any tests with UV lights against COVID-19 that have been published yet. So our product is in the same category with everybody else's product out there on the market, where we know we kill, we shouldn't say kill, we know we deactivate and reduce molds, bacteria, and viruses in the ducted system, just like any other UVC product out there. But please be wary of any company that claims their solutions kill the virus. It's unproven, and that would be a misstatement that you would then probably transfer to your customers. Okay. If you look at the next point, installing an air bright system in the return and one on the supply side, meaning over the coil, is the ideal way. It's the best installation for UV lights. The best installation is always one in the return that renders anything that comes into the system harmless, and one over the coil that would deactivate and neutralize anything over the coil that's created by the system. That, with the help of a good filter, would be a fantastic solution. This is a good way to pair two products to really work well. So the air bright, the UV with air bright would deactivate, neutralize any pathogens. They would reduce any VOCs, and having a good filtration system would capture any particles that are floating around in the air, not necessarily living particles, but it may. Skin cells, dust, all sorts of particles that are floating around in the air. Having a 1-2 punch like that is a fantastic solution for indoor air quality. It's a great way to just implement the beginning of an IAQ solution, which you could always expand on in the future. And by having both together, Resideo gives you a 10-year ultra clean coil guarantee, saying that your coil will be clean for a period of 10 years. So another tool that we have in our arsenal, another resource, is the Resideo Air Cycle program. So the Resideo Air Cycle program is a program that uses a monitor, a tool that you would purchase. It's a specialized air monitor that looks at 6 key factors of indoor air quality, including VOCs, particles, looks at temperature, looks at humidity, looks at CO2, looks at CO. So it looks at a bunch of things. And then it creates a report. It's a custom report that's generated. And the cool thing is this report is generated in 30 minutes. So when you walk into your customer's home, you would plug in your monitor. You come in with this monitor. You would plug it in. You'd go about your presentation if you were doing a sales presentation, or if this is a maintenance or a service call, you'd go about your service call, and in 30 minutes, a report would be sent to you via email to your email. That's when you sign up for this program, you would be attached to. And then it generates a report that can be very easily viewed over an iPad, or if you're using a cell phone, you could see it there too, but it's much nicer to see on an iPad. A lot of techs do use iPads now. And that report gives you clear, concise information about the IAQ, the indoor air quality of the home that you're in. And it breaks it down into the 6 categories, and it shows it in a good or needs attention or like a good, better, best, like a green, yellow, and red. Green meaning good, yellow meaning may need attention, red meaning you have to do something about this because you do have a situation that requires some attention. And this report is easily understood by the consumers, by the homeowners, and at the end of the report, you have solutions from Resideo. So it can give you solutions regarding, to control VOCs, use an air bright with UV with air bright, use ventilation, etc. And so it gives you the solutions according to the gravity of what the report said. Besides the report, besides the monitor, when you do sign up for the Air Cycle program, you would get a full training session and continued support from Resideo on this product. Jamie?
Thanks, Vinny. Wonderful information. And if any of you have questions on the products that we have covered today, you can find all the information we have covered, including information on our entire product portfolio at thenewresideo.com. And that website is featured here on this slide. Next, we are going to transition and cover some commonly asked questions about UV products. And Ryan McCardle, who is our IAQ product manager, is going to join Vinny to help answer some of these questions.
Hey, Ryan, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Vinny. How are you?
Good. So let's go over some common questions. And these questions may answer some of the questions in the chat. And then we'll open it up to the questions that we have in the chat and see how we can do with these questions for our customers. So, absolutely. Ryan, does the UV light does the UV light cycle, or is it always on? Should it cycle, or should you leave it always on?
Leave that lamp always on, Vinny.
Okay. Yeah, there's no downside to leaving it on. It's always recommended with our products that you should replace it after a period of 12 months. So that's probably going to answer our next question. So, Ryan, how often does the AirBright UV treatment system need to be replaced?
So the UV bulb should be replaced after every 12 months. Just to kind of inform you guys a little bit more, that bulb will not, shut off or turn off once it needs to be replaced. The reason why Resideo recommends a replacement after 12 months is that after the 12-month time frame, the efficiency and the effectiveness of that bulb begins to degrade. So to meet the claims that we were making in terms of neutralization rates and things like that, it has to be within that 12-month since installation period.
And then also remember, the AirBright assembly does not need replacing. It just needs cleaning from time to time.
That is correct.
So will the UV lamp turn off when it needs to be replaced?
Well, it looks like I hit that bullet. No.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. It will not turn off, so it'll still be shining and looking like it's operating just like it was when you initially installed it. But again, over time, that bulb efficiency degrades. So after 12 months, you're going to want to replace it.
Can this product be installed on ductboard?
It can. There is a separate ductboard adapter that can be purchased for ductboard installs.
So let's just expand. What comes in the box when you buy a UV 2400, Ryan?
So if you're going to buy the UV 2400, let's use the one with AirBright. You'll get the actual UV bulb itself. You'll get the mounting plate. You will get the titanium dioxide, actually AirBright honeycomb cell. You'll get the wiring needed for it, and you'll get the ballast that is included to actually power it. A separate 24-volt transformer is not included in the box, so you will need one separately to install the device.
And remember, the AT120A or the AT140A are two phenomenal transformers that you can use to power your UV light. How safe is this product for my family?
So there's a couple things that I want to highlight with this question. The first is actually the harmful effects that can come from UV light if not installed correctly. When this product is installed, you want to make sure that all of the UV light emitted from the bulb is captured and maintained within the duct system. If there is any direct contact with the skin or with your line of sight, with your eyes from the UV light, that can actually do damage to you and your family. So you want to make sure that if there's any holes or gaps or leaks within your duct that the UV light is shining through, you're going to want to make sure to cover those up. In terms of UV lights in our AirBright product being safe with those bases covered and its interaction with airborne contaminants and the air within the ductwork, it's completely harmless. The UV lights as well as the PCO technology, when it interacts with the air and the things in the air, typically the outcome is just water vapor and CO2, which is, Vinny, what you and I breathe out in the air every single day.
Every day. So one thing to note that the byproduct of our AirBright UV is the same as the byproduct, the UVC that Ryan was talking about is the same for any UV out there. You should not have it, shouldn't be exposed. You shouldn't be able to see the light, period. Okay. That's not just our product. It's any UV product that's out in the market. If you see the UV light, then it's incorrectly installed. Obviously, the advantage with ours is the fact that the AirBright also gets rid of the VOCs and the smells and the odors that are created in a home. So where is the AirBright UV treatment system available?
It should be available by your local distribution and should be installed by a professional HVAC contractor.
Correct. This is not a product that you can find in your big box stores. This is a product that is a pro install product. UV lights require, if they're line voltage, 120 or 220, they require someone who understands electrical installations, usually requiring a licensed electrician. When you're dealing with a UV AirBright 24-volt system, obviously that's not a consideration, but this is still a professional install product and should be installed by a licensed contractor that understands low voltage installations and placement of an indoor air quality solution. So Ryan, is a lamp shield needed for our product?
Yeah, really. So two really important things to highlight with this bullet here. Again, referring back to if there's any light leakage from the system during the install, you're going to want to use a shield to cover that up to protect you and your family. You're also going to, the second point here, you're also going to want to use a lamp shield if there are any components, parts, pieces in direct contact with that UV light within the system of which you're installing it. So if you have an A coil with components, electrical insulation that is not rated to UV light, if you have the UV lights interacting directly with air cleaners or motor blowers, things like that, that have non-UV light rated components on them, those components may degrade over time. I'm specifically kind of referring to maybe electrical insulation that has not been rated for UV light. If those components are in direct line of sight to the UV light, that will degrade those components and parts.
So the manufacturers of equipment, of air handlers, of coils, of things like that, that are making products nowadays, Most of their products are UV rated, but you need to check with the specific manufacturer of the equipment that you're installing to see if the product is UV rated. If you're installing a UV light in a system that may be 15 or 20 years old but still operational, be careful, and maybe a lamp shield would be required there, because as Ryan stated, on older systems where UV solution wasn't maybe as popular an option 20 years ago, you may have an issue with degrading some of the plastics and some of the components inside of the system. So please be careful of that. Ryan, can I wire it directly into a system transformer?
So like all kind of system install questions, it's dependent upon your system, right? Our product uses, it's a 24 volt product, and it pulls 17 VA here. So it can be wired into your furnace board controller or transformer. However, we do recommend using a separate transformer, just because we don't know the specifics of every single install out there, and we don't want to have any adverse effects or drawing too much current from that transformer that controls your furnace.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna let you take this one, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, a couple things that I really want to address here. The first and foremost being kind of the probably more or most frequent asked questions around air purification systems, and that's really in regards to install application in terms of what's the CFM required for UV efficiency, or the time that the UV needs to be exposed, the power and the distance, things like that, in terms of what are all these different variables within my application, and how does that relate to the UV efficiency for specifically our products. And it is a complicated question. And unfortunately, like most complicated questions, it's kind of a complicated answer because it is really variable dependent. Just to give you guys a scenario, a CFM or a system operating on 500 CFM, let's just say, is going to need a higher efficient bulb than a system operating at a lower CFM. And you guys can kind of intuitively probably imagine that is because the amount of air moving past that bulb is less, meaning that airborne contaminants are exposed longer and more to the UV light. So my goal here with this slide is to tell you that there's not a one-size-fit-all answer to that question. However, I kind of want to highlight the variables that you guys need to know and understand, and walk you through about how you can better know the efficiency rates and what system setups you need to be most effective for installing UV systems. So a couple of things that you need to know. One is your duct size, okay? And kind of correlated to that is the volumetric flow rate, or even the air velocity associated with the system that you're installing these. Okay, so once you determine that, I recommend that you guys can look up. There's things called UV irradiation dosage tables. This is publicly known knowledge that is online. This is basically a table that walks through all of the bacterias, the molds, the viruses that have been tested against or with UVC, and that have been proven, UVC proven to neutralize those different contaminants that I just mentioned there. So if you take a look at the table on the right here, you can see that I'll just pick the first row, the first column. Anthrax, I'm going to say anthrax because I can't say the actual scientific name for it. You can see that the dosage of UVC light required to kill anthrax or to neutralize anthrax at a 90% rate is 4,520. That's microwatts per second per centimeter squared. So once you guys, pull that information, you're then going to be able to want to figure out what the microwatt rating is for the product that you are installing. so that you can figure out then, okay, is that enough, or do I need more? Do I need a higher powered lamp? Do I need more lamps? Questions like that. To give you guys a frame of reference, our UV 2400 products have a 600 microwatt per centimeter squared rating, and that's at 12 inches. One thing to highlight here is that microwatt rating is always at a distance specification. So make sure that you're aware that, you look at that last number there, because 600 microwatts centimeter squared at 12 inches is a lot different than 600 microwatts centimeter squared at 1 inch. Okay, so I hope that provided you guys a little bit of information in terms of figuring out the effective and the efficiency of UV lights in different applications and installations. Again, you can imagine, depending upon the amount of airflow in your system, the type of bacteria, mold, virus that you're trying to neutralize, or even the microwatt of product that you're installing, to know if those airborne contaminants are being neutralized. It really depends upon those bullets, those 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets that I just listed there, to determine that.
So just as a kind of a wrap up, if it's the larger the system, most probably you're better off if you can install multiple lamps. You'd be better off if you have a larger volume system. Am I correct, Ryan?
Yeah, let's intuitively kind of walk through this here, right? If you have, let's say, large ducts, high velocity systems, and you're trying to neutralize bacteria, mold, and viruses that need a lot of energy from the UV light, those systems are going to be less efficient compared to systems with small ducts, low CFM or velocities, in interacting with viruses, molds, bacterias with a low dosage requirements. Does that make sense, Vinny?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's the first piece of housekeeping that I wanted to mention. The second piece, guys, was in regards to some of the chat questions that I've seen come through. I am not an expert. Vinny is not an expert on competitor products. We are really only here to speak to Honeywell Home and Resideo products and what our products do, the specifications to our products and how they interact in different installations and applications. So, we're not here to compare ours versus theirs, simply because we're not an expert in theirs, and we don't really have a foundation to stand on to do so. So just want to make that clear for everyone, listening in here.
Okay. So at this point, Jamie, we're going to open it up to questions in the chat.
We are, and thank you all for being so active in the chat and the Q&A section. We've got lots of questions coming in. Ryan and Vinny have done a great job, and some of these questions have actually already been answered. So I'm going to give them just a moment here to kind of get caught up on some of the questions that are here. We've tagged a few of them to be answered live, so if you want to take a look at those.
Okay. All right, so let's start with this first one here. UVC light needs a long shine time to break down organisms. Do germs moving in a 450 feet per minute airstream spend enough time in the light to be killed? I thought it needed hours of shine time, hence the reason UV lights are best on stationary objects like coils.
So that goes kind of to the thing that I began with. It is dependent upon your duct size. You have listed the 450 feet per minute. But I don't know what, it's dependent upon your duct size, the viruses and bacteria that you're looking to kill, as well as the number of lights that you have in there. Again, I hope kind of the information that I went through earlier provided you with enough of a walkthrough to be able to determine if it's enough. I can say that I think to kind of maybe the subcontext of the question, because if you install UV lights over the A coil, because the A coil is a stationary, piece, and will continuously be under that UV light, that UV light will be more effective at killing bacteria or whatever is built up on that mold than specific things moving through the air.
Okay. Okay, there's a question that says, what about UV damage to ductwork or ductboard? We covered that one. You just have to be refer to the manufacturer of your equipment to see whether or not they're UV rated to withstand any type of UVC irradiation.
Yeah, I saw. I'm going through here too. I did want to mention or answer one that's from Derek about damaging A coils. I think I maybe talked about the damage to A coils in terms of degradation of plastics and components that aren't rated to UV light exposure. There's another piece to that I want to mention that maybe this is why your contractor said that. When these are installed, make sure that when you're drilling the hole into the duct, if you're going to install it above or below the A coil, that you're drilling the hole so you don't come in contact and drill into the A coil. So that may be why the contractor said there was a possibility of damaging A coils.
All right, I got a question here from Kim regarding ozone. It says there's a concern regarding ozone production from UV lights. What is your position on this?
So I can tell you right now that I cannot make the statement for our products because we have not seen or we have not received yet the certification. But there is a UL certification for no ozone production for these products, for UV products, and we are in the process right now of obtaining that certification.
Jamie, there's a question from Jeff. Do you want to take that? Or you want me to take it?
Go right ahead.
So what equipment does Jeff ask, what equipment do you recommend for a contractor to test the homeowner air? Well, that would be a good way to test homeowner air would be an air cycle product, our monitor. That would give you, like I said earlier in the presentation, it's a great way to get a good idea of what's occurring inside the homeowner's environment, the indoor environment, and it's a test that's very accurate and that gives you results in 30 minutes. So you could go about your presentation or your service call, and then you could end the call with a report that you can leave with the customer, or just go over it online with them, and give them the solutions to the problems that we've encountered doing the test.
So, not to jump to the next question here, Vinny.
No, go ahead, please.
Good point. There's a couple that I'm seeing maybe in terms of not a specific question that I'm going to call out here, but I do want to provide a little bit of clarity on specifically the Air Bright product. If you see our products, you can basically see all of the UV 100 and the UV 2400 U1000 products are just UVC lamp products, and UVC are basically just lamps that emit UVC light to neutralize mold, viruses, and bacteria contaminants in the air, which Vinny talked about earlier in the presentation. The product on the way left, the UV 2400 U5000, which is our Air Bright product, is a UVC light in combination with that PCO technology, that titanium dioxide honeycomb bar that Vinny talked about earlier. That honeycomb bar is the photocatalytic oxidizer that Vinny talked about earlier. That is the piece that handles the VOCs and odors in the air. That is the oxidizer that, when interaction happens with the UVC light, will emit oxidizers and break down VOCs like formaldehyde and ammonia in the air. And the breakdown of those components, the resulting breakdown is CO2 and water vapor.
Okay, so if a customer asks which is better, the high voltage or the low voltage units, what would you say?
I would say it is system dependent. There's not one better than the other. I will say, however, that the high wattage versus the low wattage has a higher microwatts per centimeter squared rating, which essentially means that it emits more UVC light and has a higher efficiency rating.
So it's all about power and placement. Like I said, I keep going back to that, but there's no such thing as having too much. If your system, you think you may require more because it's with higher volume or higher velocity air movement, you may want to position it where you might be using some of the line voltage or higher power bulbs versus the lower voltage UV 2400s. But the UV 2400U is really a great solution for the majority of installations that you might be doing out there. Any of these bulbs will work. The fact of the matter is the UV 2400 system is very simple installation and easy maintenance.
So as we're kind of talking about the bulbs here, I see a couple questions regarding hazardous material. There are mercury in these bulbs. As best practice, make sure that when you do the change out or, the new install for the bulbs that, the disposal of those is done properly.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to jump in here as we are just about at time. Thank you all for your questions today. Incredible questions in the chat. We really appreciate your engagement. And just a reminder, we'd love to have you join us on next week's presentations. We will have a presentation on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time to cover air filtration. So we'd love to see you at next week's sessions. And then this next slide is just another reminder to please send us your first and last name and your NATE identification number if you haven't already to the homes.university@resideo.com website. If you did not give us your NATE identification number in your registration, we will be communicating with NATE so that you can all receive credit for attending this training. And two final things to note before we end today. Once our training session concludes, you will be prompted to complete a survey regarding our webinar session today. Please take a few minutes to provide us with your feedback on the training you participated in today. We are looking forward to offering online webinar sessions going forward, and we want to hear your feedback, including your suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover. And finally, you will be receiving an email from us in a few days that includes some follow-up information, specifically the link to our new training websites that's going to list the schedule for our upcoming webinars. Additionally, we are recording these sessions, and we want to share these recorded sessions with you. So we are launching a new webpage that will house all of these trainings and future webinar sessions. So stay tuned for that information from us. And with that, thank you all for joining us on today's Resideo webinar session. Thank you to Vinny Ventura and thank you to Ryan McCardle for helping us with this presentation today. We appreciate you attending today's session on UV air purifiers, and we do look forward to having you attend a future training session. Have a wonderful day, everyone.